Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Dyer and welcome to Colorado Inside Out on this Friday, October the 4th. Let me get right to introducing you to this week's Insider panel. We have Patty Calhoun, founder and editor of Westword, Amber McReynolds, National Election Administration expert and former Director of Elections for the City and County of Denver, Laura Aldrete, a city building consultant and former planning director for the City and County of Denver, and Sean Walsh, public affairs expert with Sean Walsh Consulting. We have a little more than 4 weeks until Election Day. In fact, ballots here in Colorado head out in the mail a week from today. So let's discuss where we stand. Patty Calhoun.
Well, although Trump said 2 weeks ago that he was coming to Aurora, we don't see any evidence that he is right now. But we are getting J.D. Vance on the 8th. J.D. Vance, of course, we already saw on Tuesday night during that vice presidential debate where he was quite slick. We were talking about Eddie Haskell-like, whereas Tim Walz was sincere, looked a little like a deer in the headlights in the beginning, but really revved up at the end when we found out that J.D. Vance still will not say that it was a valid election in 2020. And that's going to be the issue going for the next 4 weeks and probably 4 weeks and maybe 4 years afterwards, that if we have people who are still denying the 2020 election, what's going to happen in 4 weeks? We still have Dave Williams, head of the Colorado Republican Party. He has survived the challenge against him so far. I'm sure he'll be greeting J.D. Vance when he comes to town next week. And we don't need a state full of election deniers running the Republican Party, which really could use a break and get some reasonable people in there. Amber, your thoughts?
Well, first, this is the perfect time for voters to make sure their address is up to date and they're registered and sign up for things like ballot tracking, which is something that Colorado has led on around the country. So I would encourage everyone to do that. And then the second big thing, and Patty mentioned this, the lies about the election process continue to permeate among some. And so I encourage everyone, if you want to tour the process, if you want to learn how elections work, go to your county clerk because they're the experts on this. They have great information on their websites, and so you can really see and learn about the process as we go into this cycle.
Okay, all right. Laura.
Well, headed back to the vice president debate earlier this week, I wanted to comment on, of course, the accusation that Vance had around the correlation between immigrants coming into this country and the housing crisis, which that accusation is laughable. Certainly, the housing issue that we have across this country is much more complex with a variety of issues, whether it's inflation, whether it's labor, supply chain, construction costs, construction material costs. And in fact, foreign workers make up a third of the construction workforce in this country. So the proposed crackdown on immigration, in fact, will just exacerbate the housing issue that we already have in this country. And I hope there is some sense to be made and reckoning about the lies that he expounded on in the debate.
I've trained a lot of candidates prior to going to debate, so just looking at it from a technical perspective, I was surprised that the moderators didn't let the candidates who are less well known than their running mates take some time at the top to describe who they were a little bit. Diving right into foreign affairs right at the get-go, I thought was a little odd for the moderators to do. I think the candidates probably would have appreciated more time to. And J.D. Vance, as you notice, he did. He took time during the first answer to give a little bit of his bio. He was certainly more deft than Walz at coloring outside of the lines with the debate in terms of, his microphone had to be shut off because he fact-checked the moderators. He wove a little bit of energy messaging into his closing statement. So just from a technical aspect, you've got to give the points to J.D. Vance. I agree with Patty. Walz eventually found his footing. It was a little late. And of course, the damning non-answer to 2020, there's no good answer to that, and Vance did the best that he could, but I think that was one of the starkest and the best points for Walsh during the debate was that was that 2020 question that Vance refused to answer.
And the Vance event next week here in Denver is private
Very private.
and probably very expensive.
But we'd all love to go if they want to invite us.
Okay, I'm sure you'll be first on the list. All right, let's talk more about something that Amber brought up. Election conspiracies and allegations of fraud are everywhere again this election cycle. And on Thursday, one of Colorado's loudest conspiracy theorists learned her punishment. Will that influence other people out there from being quiet and not spreading more allegations and rumors? Amber, let's start with you.
Well, first, I am delighted to see accountability on this, because the damage that Tina Peters has done, not only in Colorado, not only to the reputation of Mesa County and in Colorado at large, but the damage that she has done nationally to election officials and election offices around the country is significant. And so it's good, from my view, to see accountability like that be bestowed upon her. And, I do hope it serves as a deterrent. And, this sort of conspiracy-laden attempts, and it wasn't just her. We've seen this, pushed by many people, about the election process, has real significant damage and can have significant damage on the people that are running elections. And so I hope that it does deter others. I don't have confidence that it will as much as we'd like it to, but I certainly hope it does deter others from attempting this same narrative.
Mm-hmm. I think, Tina, in this case, to your point about there's this body of people around, right? And Tina was one of the tips of the spear to be put on the front line and receive the consequences, right? And the accountability, which is completely deserved. Up until the minute before she was sentenced, she believes, or she, refuses to acknowledge her role in trying to undermine democracy and the lies. And I think there is a cult thing happening in this group that needs to, I don't know how we crack that. How do you go to a group of people and diffuse that and bring in truth without, and get them to hear it? And it appears that she still does not hear it. She is still 100% believing that she was in the right, which is scary to me, and I hope 9 years of accountability might change that.
Yeah, it's sad that we have these conspiracy theorists among us. They don't need anything. They don't need to prove anything, right? All they need to do is sow doubt and suspicion. Holding an election is a big job. There's a lot of variables to that, as Amber knows. I mean, there's data that they're managing. You're managing volunteers. You're managing multiple ballot styles. You're managing mail. You're managing, there's so many protocols. There can't help but be errors. There are discrepancies and errors. Those are quite common. Do they constitute fraud or abuse? No, and that's what these conspiracy theories are trying to capitalize, is just the element of a question. So like something that there's going to be more core requests. To answer your question, unfortunately, because these people don't concern themselves with facts, these doubts are still going to be with us.
Amber, you've talked about, I'll get right back to you, Patty, in a second. You have talked about how there's one area people will focus on in terms of that's faulty, but there are so many different checks and balances within the overall system, like Sean was talking about.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I kind of consider it to be a security ecosystem. I mean, there are so many different points in the process that all work together to make sure the process is in fact secure. And that's really the education, I think, that can happen of the larger population of voters. And that really can come from the county clerks, because so many of them have great information on their websites. They'll tour people around the offices so that you can actually see how the election works. And as Sean mentioned, the Cora requests, we're seeing this huge uptick in Cora requests that are literally duplicated across the country, and they're designed, frankly, to kind of gum up the system and distract county clerks from getting their jobs done. And that's really what they need to be focused on now, is making sure that the public at large can participate.
Okay, Patty.
And that the public at large realizes it's their responsibility to go get the information too, because the county clerks can have it out there, but if you're too busy listening to Fox News or looking at a website or a podcast starring Tina Peters, don't know if she'll be able to do that from prison, but she'd look great in the jumpsuit. It's really hard. You have to really search out the information you want. We basically are going to have to spend days, I think, searching out the information we want on the different ballot measures in Colorado and in Denver, just because there's so many, to be an informed voter. But to be an informed voter about how the system works, that takes time and work too. But we should trust our county clerks, our election clerks, who work so hard here. And we should also look into, say, what Jack Smith, the new report that's out about what he is saying Trump did on January 6th. There's just shocking material out there. We all need to educate ourselves before we go into the next vote.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You know, every week before Election Day, our insiders are discussing a specific measure that's either on the statewide ballot or on a local measure. And this week, let's look at Measure 2Q on the Denver ballot, and that's Denver Health's sales tax, which would help fund the hospital, which serves residents throughout this region, not just in Denver. Let's start with you, Laura, to talk about this tax, because there are two dueling taxes, sales tax proposals in Denver right now.
Yeah, well, I unfortunately was a recent customer of the Trauma One Center at DHHA, and I can, from firsthand experience, tell you that the caliber and the value of the Trauma One Center is incredible, right? DHHA is known for their Trauma One Center, but delivering health care in schools to 16,000 students, that's where you start mitigating health issues, right? Dollars to go for living wage for employees at DHHA. That's incredibly important for the work that they do, the stressful situations that they're under, mental health, adding to mental health. All these components that are in this measure are really, really important. And I would consider this life safety, right? I don't consider, for all the issues and the dollars that the city and the state are pouring into affordable housing, I wouldn't consider it life safety. So if I have to choose between life safety and more dollars for affordable housing, I'm gonna choose life safety.
2Q, the folks running that campaign, they did a great job of availing themselves of one of the more important budgets in a campaign, and that is of time. They've socialized the need for a year now, right? Lining up donors, doing the research, making sure the community was aware, lobbying city council, sitting down with city council, and because city council is critical to that effort of putting an issue on the ballot, and they were able to do so in a way that council was comfortable giving a unanimous vote to putting on the ballot. And you can contrast that to the mayor's affordable housing question, 2R, a little bit, much later getting out of the gate. Either the mayor underestimated the role of council in that process, or he overestimated his ability to be influential with council because he didn't get the unanimous vote to put that on the ballot. It's 9-4. It'll be interesting to see those 4 city council members that voted against putting it on the ballot, how vocal they become during the campaign.
Patty.
It isn't just city council members who felt blindsided when the affordability sales tax came up. It was all the stakeholders who, as Sean noted, had worked together for months, in some cases a year, to really put the arguments together, to put the package together, to make a case for why, as the core center of the metro area, Denver Health has services it must provide, and it needs help if it's going to keep doing them. So you go from that very specific and reasoned and inclusive campaign that really tugs at where Denverites are. You want to vote for people, you want to help people, but you want specific help. And I think, unlike the affordability tax, which is so vague on where the money will go, this one will squeak by because Denverites will want to help those who really need help and know where the money's going.
Mm-hmm. I've heard it referred to as the safety net, for all of us here in Colorado, this hospital.
Yeah, and I would just say too, I think what on 2Q in particular, it's also a testament to Donna Lynn's leadership, and she has not only worked and led in the healthcare industry, but she also knows how to put these coalitions together, and she was very thoughtful with how this all came together. And I agree with all the comments that have been made, and that healthcare and the pandemic, I think, really illustrated the importance of these systems to support communities. And to me, this issue is a very important one. And I again do think it's a testament to Donna's leadership.
And we all know that Denver Health has been here for a while, but I looked it up. It's opened in 1860. Mm-hmm. It is an institution in our state. All right. We will see how this plays out. On Monday night, there will be another community meeting held by Denver Public Schools regarding its plan to close more schools. The list of schools will be announced next month. The decisions are mostly based on declining enrollment, but the school board says it will also look at the academic performance of the schools as well. Meanwhile, Sean, a new study shows that closing struggling schools, although it can be very disruptive for kids who walk to school or live close to their school, when it comes to the long-range picture of looking at this student, it's actually better in terms of learning to get out of the schools.
Yeah, I think that's not very much comfort, I think, to parents who have a child or a student in a school that's closing, whether it's because of its underperforming or because of declining enrollment. This double whammy, though, of declining enrollment, which actually is affecting a lot of other school districts in the metro area, not just Denver, plus closing schools for underperformance. It really it's impactful because it affects how much money the school district gets, because the School Finance Act, which gives the school districts the bulk of their money, they get $8,500 in the 2023-2024 year. DPS has projected a 6,000 student loss in the next 4 years, right? That's substantial, $51 million, maybe out of a $1.8 billion budget. But what that does is it further burdens the school district to make up that money by going to their voters, right? Issue 4A is on the ballot. It should pass. That would give $950 million to the school district, in part to address an infrastructure backlog and put air conditioning in a lot of the schools that don't have them.
Patty.
Wish 4A also included a clause about more transparency, better communications. We're still finding out what happened at East High with Luis Garcia, who was murdered, and his family is now suing. There is so much still going on. The parents are pushing for more answers. I think what's odd about the timing with this DPS, these hearings, are they're giving you a lot of advance time to be prepared to argue about what they're going to say or how they're measuring which schools are going to close. But there's really only 2 weeks from when those schools are announced to when the vote is. And that doesn't give you a whole lot of time to parse through the logic they're giving you as to how they're going to make the decision, but really weigh whether or not those schools do fall under that. So I think we're going to see a lot of upheaval in those 2 weeks with parents who are extremely concerned about what's happening to their schools, wish they could have taken a lot more time to discuss it.
Well, yeah, and I have 2 children that are in middle school at DPS, and the constant conversations with parents about just general performance of the schools, frustrations that parents have. I agree with Patty that it's really important to get this right in terms of socializing what a plan may look like, and do so early, because we are in the middle of this as parents that have kids in the schools, and want to make sure that the kids are not negatively impacted by some of these decisions, and then the teachers. I think the teacher perspectives on a lot of this is so often skipped over, and it's really important to include them too.
Well, I think the main point is it's our children, right? So it's very emotive, and it's our community, also very emotional, right? These 2 points, and we come together as a community around our children's schools. And so I don't know if DPS can ever get it right? You're just almost set up for a bad answer, whatever it is. I do think that comparing it to the Boasberg-Bennett era of reforms, they were very comprehensive and thoughtful, not just about what schools to close, but where do we need to pay teachers more? What underperforming schools or challenged schools do we need to give a higher pay to teachers so that we attract the right teachers to those schools? We need to think about if your school is going to close, how are those kids going to get to the school they're now programmed to go to, and is it a good school, right? So I think there's a range and a comprehensive policy system that DPS needs to set up as they go into this process of closing schools. So you've got to be cognizant of what's happening today.
Let's talk about some of the highs and lows that occurred this week. We'll start with the lows, so we end on a good note for the week. Patty, let's start with you with the low. Disappointment.
We're going to have a mixed anniversary, sort of happy, sort of not, on Monday, which is for the 30th anniversary of light rail, which has been really great in some ways and really a disappointment in others. We have a light rail stop right outside this studio, which is not operational. We have trains that were going 5, 10 miles an hour through the summer. But the other problem we have is a lack of transparency also in this agency, where they wouldn't admit they'd had to fire the police chief of RTD who'd been driving 100 miles an hour. And that was a really critical role. You remember when Union Station was coming under fire for problems, and they were largely at the bus terminal and RTD problems. So we need transparency. Let's go into the next 30 years with much more honesty. And voters, think about whether you want to de-Bruce RTD. Look at the RTD board candidates and really consider it.
Mm-hmm. Amber.
The hurricane impact. So, natural disasters like this have significant impact, especially within 40 days of an election. The election officials in the 4 states impacted are scrambling, frankly, to make sure that a lot of the displaced people, which there are many, and ballots were in the middle of going out, that there are clear rules around that. So they've done an excellent job, but just an impact like this is devastating to an area. And not only the election offices, but the Postal Service, any of this infrastructure that gets impacted by these huge disasters is a problem. And, I wish all there, especially that are dealing with election-related matters, the best of luck as they move forward, and hopefully they all stay safe.
Yeah.
As one review of the debate noted, Vance did an excellent job of impersonating a decent man. And I hope that the voters are not fooled by the weird and the actual weird and vitriolic candidate that Vance is, and saw through it.
Okay.
Mine's a little personal. I'm going to sound a little bit like a hypocrite here, but I would like to slap firmly on the wrist all of the political campaigns whose vendors, whose SMS texting vendors, are not honoring my request to stop when I write stop in response. I have purchased these products for campaigns that I've run. They're good outreach tools, but on the campaigns that I'm associated with, if somebody wants to opt out, you let them opt out.
Yeah. They're not stopping, no. Let's talk about something positive.
We actually did a whole issue devoted to nice things about Aurora. 2 of my staff writers grew up there. I hope Donald Trump stays away and we let this city get back on its feet. They also need to work on their communications, but they're working on their crime issues. They're going to sell those apartment complexes, we hope. Let's let Aurora settle down.
Okay, all right.
So my high and positive is actually the nuggets on camels. There was an entire discussion last night with my son and my daughter about wanting to visit the Middle East and ride camels because they saw the videos of the nuggets on the camels. So thank you to them for adding another area of the world that we can go visit someday.
That was great video, wasn't it?
It was great.
Yeah, I loved
it. It was
it.
fantastic.
Laura?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was a recent customer, unfortunately, of DHHA's Trauma One Center in a bike vehicle accident about 6-7 weeks ago. And I just want to give a grateful shout out to the CEO, Donna Lynn, who runs an amazing organization. Certainly the docs, the nurses, the staff. I was there for over 8 hours and just received amazing care. Both technically, but also like they cared about who I was as a human. And I can't emphasize enough, the support for 2Q this fall on the ballot, because it's an amazing facility.
We're so glad you're okay.
Me
and
too.
with your accessory here, it's okay.
Yeah,
right?
it's all right.
All right.
It's getting there.
We're so glad you're okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean?
The Civic Center Conservancy this week hosted a volunteer event, for lack of a better term, at the park. They're preparing it for the winter. I don't think the Civic Center Conservancy gets enough credit for taking back that park. We can remember not too long ago it was not accessible by tourists. It was kind of unpleasant to say the least. But now it's got festivals and music, and again, it just makes our city look better. And they are working with partners on a workforce development program with homeless people are coming in to work in the park. So Civic Center Conservancy has done a lot to make the park safer and more pleasant.
That's wonderful. Okay, great. My High is a discussion coming up next weekend, which you're all invited to attend, that will take what we kind of discussed earlier about election integrity a step further. We are taking Colorado Inside Out on the road to Mackey Auditorium at CU Boulder on Sunday, the 13th of October, for a conversation about the voting process in our state. And we will hear straight from county clerks and election administration experts. We expect that this insight will go far in building more unity and trust in our election process. For more information, and if you want to register to come, it's a free ticket. Go to pbs12.org/tickets. Thanks to our panel for coming this week. We really appreciate all of your insight. Thank you for watching or to listening to our podcasts on Spotify or Apple. And I wish a good Rosh Hashanah to all who celebrate. There's a lot going on in the world right now, so enjoy that time with your family. I also want to wish a good weekend to those state employees who have a 3-day weekend, because this coming Monday is Cabrini Day. Colorado is the first in the nation to have a paid state holiday that recognizes a woman. And St. Frances Xavier Cabrini was an exceptional woman. So have a good weekend, everybody. I will see you next week here on PBS 12.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.